Like lawyers think they don't need training from from lawyers or other people, but I think it is very important. We found it very, very difficult to convince our judiciary to accept training, but when we did, the results were very quick and positive. So I agree with that. On the question, the comment maybe that was asked about the other factors that go around this, I think we have to look, in my view, at a much broader strategy that is not only focused on the access to information legislation, but looks at all the other factors that impede access to information in one way. That restrict us from getting information, and also when the information has been received, that restrict us from disseminating this information, especially the court procedures, the injunctions, and all the other provisions that are coming in. And like I said, countries are now bringing in new legislation with restrictive provisions on access to information, even after passing their own legislation. We need to look at that also.
Very good. Nick?
Just very quickly on the earlier question about what you need to do to make these laws work. I mean, clearly you need to get the whole institutional architecture right. And one of our problems is that we don't have an information commissioner. And some of that work can be taken up by other bodies like the Human Rights Commission, but there's no specialized capacity to make that happen, which is a major problem. There's no real individual institutional locus that champions freedom of information. Interestingly, there's one judgment by our former Chief Justice, Sandile Ngobo, which actually stitches together the idea of media rights and media responsibilities to the idea of access to information. In the case of Brimmer, which is the first one I described, he actually said that because of the media's influence in a democratic state and its responsibility to report accurately, there's more of a duty to government to provide access to information, because it's much harder to report accurately when you don't have information. So, I mean, I think that connection is not one that's often made, but it's made trenchantly by our constitutional court, and it's worth remembering. He says access to information is crucial to accurate reporting, and thus to imparting accurate information to the public, which deepens government's responsibility. Raymond is right, of course, that there are a raft of issues impacting on our freedom to operate in this country, despite the very broad constitutional protection that free speech in general and freedom of the media in particular enjoys in this country. There are new laws, some worse than others, which potentially restrict access to information and will restrict the way in which we search for information. And there also has been, in recent years, a bit of a tradition of attempting to delay, frustrate, and increase the price of publication by bringing pre-publication interdict applications in court. We certainly don't suffer from the kind of very serious problem that the British press does of super injunctions, which remind me of the double secret probation in the movie Animal House, which are so secret that nobody can even know they exist or who's bringing them. But they do run up our costs. I mean, a number have been brought against my newspaper, which publishes on a Friday morning, and the strategy is to bring them late on a Thursday, so that even if you lose, we're not able to print, and you get an effective injunction. But the jurisprudence now is becoming pretty good, and courts generally are rejecting them, with a few anomalies. But I think by fighting this fight over nearly a decade, as Raymond will know, we've managed to get enough jurisprudence in place to make it pretty hard to get a last-minute injunction against us.
Very well. Any last comment on that, Derek?
Just a very brief response to the question about what could be included in sort of model access to information. Starts from the obvious trite point that you can't access what doesn't exist. And one of the big problems, and I think it needs to be incorporated in access to information legislation, and it's experienced all over, is that very often information doesn't exist, it's not produced, it's not filed, it's not archived, and it's not preserved. And I know there's a lot of opposition to the protection of information bill in South Africa, but part of it, which is maybe not so objectionable, speaks precisely to that, preserving and protecting information.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Please join me in thanking our presenters for being very faithful. for keeping to their time, and also for those people who asked the questions, for tolerating me when I was sitting next to you.